loaded. Want to check it out? So I've got Google Hangouts open, and I'm wondering, like, where should it show up?
Will you join, right?
I haven't been asked to join, so I was expecting there to be some. Yeah.
That should be fine. You try to invite again.
Okay.
Yeah, after you take it, I want to go to
Sorry, was it? Could you type it again? Sorry.
Sorry, you want me to introduce?
Yeah. All right, so people, sorry to get late. Unfortunately, Sushi is not coming yet, meaning we are canceling the event. Maybe not. So our Sushi will be coming soon, and we have pizza, we have free drink outside. Everybody have drinks, and the restaurant outside. And I don't know why we have so less people today. Something wrong. Well, maybe some people just going to TypeScript. Anyway, so we shall start once Brian log on to the Hangout. And could somebody go into meetup.com to check the YouTube so that if you can watch the screen and hear the sound? Appreciate. Is the invitation coming to you?
No, it's not.
No? Could you try to log out and log in? Are you using Chrome?
I am using Chrome.
Could you try to log out once and then log in back? It's supposed to come. And you're connecting to the internet for sure, right? Of course. And the code in front is the Wi-Fi code.
Okay, so logged in.
And what chat code are you using?
I'm not using. I'm just sorry. I'm
What are
using
you?
the
I mean, the monitor.
I haven't hooked up to the monitor.
Is it mine?
Oh,
I cannot log into the.
Is that on?
I think it's just this. Right. Yeah. I took this guy to the Himalayas.
There you go. So it's on the screen. Yeah.
So we're good.
Yep. And please log in back to Hangout. And anybody can check YouTube, please. Is it on? And do you hear my sound? Can I take this off? We can plug there.
Like what? Where?
This one. This is power.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, right. Where can we plug it?
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
Is this yours? I know it was stuck in here.
There is. And did you in? No?
So I'm not getting any notification that I got a hangout. So
What happened?
should I reach out to you or like a new conversation?
But this is the account you're using, right?
Yes, it is.
That's exactly same account, right?
Yeah.
That's weird. I have no idea what's going on. Did you find any duplicate account here when you type your name?
No, not at all. Actually, it knew me on that one. So.
Could you type it again so that I can double check? Or do you have the email open of this account? If you just go into the Gmail.
Okay.
And you may be receiving the email. Sorry about that. And to not waste your time, let me just start my presentation today. All right, so let me stop the music. All righty. And all right, so welcome to the Azure Tokyo Meetup. This is the 30-something, and the sushi is coming? Yay, sushi is coming. Feel free to pick up this sushi. So before starting, I just quickly introducing the Azure one here. And could you try to see the Hangout because he cannot find the Hangout.
I checked in my email as well.
All right, so that's the Azure what's new. And have you ever visiting? Come on, mouse. Good. Yeah, so if you know this address showing all the update about the Azure. So if you go into the azure.microsoft.com and updates, and it's showing right now available tab and in preview and in development, so that you can see the latest status of the Azure, what's new. But today I just pick up the three very interesting topic for me. One is Windows AKS support. So AKS is a Azure Kubernetes service. And before we only supporting the Linux container, obviously, but now we are supporting Windows container. So if you are having the Windows container Azure Kubernetes running, you can do that on the Azure as well. And the Kubernetes service also have the new services. I think there are 3 new services. And we had 5 categories before. One of the category was knowledge, which only have the Q&A service. But now knowledge became the decision, meaning that Kubernetes service gives you more decision-making idea over the type of the service. And for the detail, please go to the Kubernetes service to check the detail. And Power BI had a bunch of enhancements this month and the last month. So please go to this address. I will share the thread later, and you can just check what's new. And there is a tab to filter down which service you're interested in so that you only be able to see the service update of your interest. The other news is Build 2019 is completed. I think it was early last month. And most of the video is already available. So just go to the build, and then you can find all the video. And if you prefer Japanese, we actually did the decode 2019, or it's supposed to be the last month, yeah, end of the last month. And most of the video also available here, including a slide. So just go into the decode 2019, try to Bing it or Google it. Then you are asked to log in, but you have to log in, but you don't have to pay. Then you have all the session with the slide and video if it's not NDA. All right, so that's the what's new of Azure. And how about the Hangout status?
Yeah.
Is it coming?
Not yet.
And did you find the no?
So even on the meetup, is there a place on the meetup for us to maybe see the?
This year, we could check the stream, but I wasn't sure whether.
I mean, that's my stream, yeah, and you need to log into the Hangout.
Right. Can I reach out to you? Is there like who would I look to, or do you need to?
Because my account is your Azure Meetup account. That's quite an issue. Do you have any other account, by the way?
I do. I have a Bitflyer account, but I don't know if that's appropriate.
Are you just using this slide or what?
Yeah, just slides.
Yeah, but there is no way to share, right? Yeah, sorry for that. Meanwhile, please grab the sushi. Hey, Brian, could you give me the messenger?
What?
Messenger. Are you using Messenger?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Brian S. Boyd at hotmail.com.
Brian Boyd, right? So I just send in the message for the direct link, which you may be able to join. All right, sent. And could you open your messenger to try to log in to the session? Hope it works.
So moving forward.
Join.
All right. Cool.
And did you find the link?
Yeah.
Nice. And if you in, I will share to you. Yep, just okay, and click join in the bottom. Right. All right, and let me just mute myself. And I give the presentation to you. And could you unmute your microphone and you can share from the. So if you, this one.
Oh.
The green one. Yep. Right. Yep. And if you do that, it should be go YouTube. Yeah. And somebody could make sure you see that on the YouTube. And could you just sharing your presentation? Yeah, just minimize the window.
I'm not sure if I got the I got me unmuted yet.
No, this is unmuted already.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
It
it
still
should be.
unmuted?
Yeah, no worries.
Okay.
Yeah,
I know,
Do you
it's
hear the
like,
sound as well?
Yeah, it's working on the phone.
All right, cool.
Awesome.
All right. Nice. And this is a hand mic. This is a disk mic, and yeah, it's all yours.
Cool. Well, sorry for the delay, folks. Thanks for hanging in there. This talk is about Cosmos DB resource token system. The effort here is, from my perspective, is a lot of people think that Cosmos DB is too expensive. So I'd like to show that maybe that's not the case. There are certainly high throughput use cases where it can be very expensive, but if it's a core part of your business, then maybe it's not so much. Anyway, this is more geared towards allowing many applications to use one Cosmos DB collection, and to do it in a clear way that your SREs will support. So securing Cosmos DB, there are basically two ways of doing it, and only two ways of doing it. You have access keys or you have a resource token. So either you give everything away with your access key, which I think a lot of people just do by default because they haven't built a resource token server, but that means that developers can then create billable resources on the fly. They can create collections on the fly, and that can get very expensive very quickly. So the first step in managing the costs associated with Cosmos DB is to manage the creation of collections. So if you're not giving away the access key, then you can only provide a resource token. And so this presentation is about the details of a system that I created that is an efficient way to serve resource tokens for Cosmos DB. So just to give you some background on what Cosmos DB is. So Cosmos DB a Cosmos DB instance supports one or more databases. Each database supports one or more collections. The collection is the billable entity. So you create 5 collections, you're billed for each one of those collections. Each collection can then contain multiple partitions, and a collection can contain partitions, or it can actually contain documents outside of a partition. And then if you have a partition, then it can contain one or more documents. The current system I'm going to outline here talks about being able to set the resource token or the configuration at the collection and the partition level. So you could set it at the document level, but I didn't see any use case for that, and so didn't spend the time to do that. So by setting the permissions at the partition level, you allow your various systems to more efficiently use Cosmos DB, an individual collection. And so the question is why? So that is because if you have a collection that is then broke down into individual partitions, and a particular application only has a resource token for a particular partition, it simply can't see the other partitions within that collection. So it can't read it, it can't list it, it can't delete it. I mean, in effect, when you give out this resource token for a particular partition, that resource token feels like it owns that collection because it can't see anything else, and it only sees its data. It's only allowed to see its own data. Also, just to give some background on a resource token, it itself has a minimum lifespan, or it has a lifespan. It can go from 10 seconds to 5 hours. I chose 4 hours for the system I've implemented. So to give you a view on what I was talking about, the set of dark blue boxes in the middle, that is one collection. But as you can see, there are 3 different partitions there. The left 2 partitions, there's only 1 document within it, whereas the far right partition, there are multiple documents. When you have a resource token to the middle partition, it simply it knows nothing about, nor can it gain any knowledge of the partitions on either side of it. Since the resource token has a set lifetime, the question then becomes, when do you want to refresh it? And so for me, it seemed what I've implemented is at 30 minutes before it is to expire, I start looking to refresh it. I could, you could say just wait until the last second, but we're talking about cloud resources, and cloud resources go down. So it just makes sense to start looking to refresh these resource tokens at a reasonable time. In this case, the 30 minutes is 1/8 the time of the actual lifetime. So to me, that seems reasonable. And then, so there's the refreshing of the resource token, but then when do you start, from the application perspective, when do you start checking to see if there's a refreshed token? And in this case, I chose 15 minutes or 1/16, but that's configurable, and you can choose how you'd like to do that. And a key component to this system is this custom class called Cosmos DB SQL Client. So this custom class allows an application to manage multiple connections to multiple Cosmos DBs. It caches these connections, and it caches the resource tokens with their expiry time using static variables. So what's important about that is that by storing these within static variables, these collections are then, they're in a sense a kind of global variable throughout the application. So if one part of the application fires up a connection to a Cosmos DB, and then another part of the application wants to reuse that connection, then since the first part already set it up, the second part, when it goes to access it, the Cosmos DB SQL client sees that it's already there, and so it just provides access right away. So it makes the entire process of working with Cosmos DB much simpler. Since it is a shared static variable, thread safety was brought in by storing the connections and resource tokens within a concurrent dictionary. Also, the Cosmos DB SQL client simply implements iDocument client, and iDocument client is what the Cosmos DB document client implements. So this is simply a thin wrapper around that, and basically before each call, it checks to see if it needs to refresh the resource token, sub-millisecond check, I believe. And then if it doesn't, then it simply forwards on the call to the document client method. If it does, then it makes the necessary steps in order to refresh that token. But you'll see that I've made it as quick as possible by bringing in caching at every possible part of the flow of both accessing and refreshing the resource tokens. Likewise, so I don't know how many of you guys work with SQL Server or database, but you're within the working with SQL Server, the .NET runtime actually manages a set of database connections. So in a way, this is a step in that direction, in that the caching can start to serve as a kind of database connection pool. So although it's not exactly the same, it's similar enough so that, like using SQL Server, you're encouraged to instantiate the Cosmos DB SQL client in the method that you're going to use it. Instantiate it and then let it go out of scope. There's no need to keep objects like that hanging around because the static data is being held at the type. So this is this shows basically what I mean. So here we have an app service, and an app service can have multiple instances. And so each instance is a particular process. And so when a process is loaded, it loads its types. And so the static members are loaded at that time, and they're only unloaded once the process exits. So these static variables are, these connections and resource tokens are available and cached for as long as these instances are around. Notice that there's no, cross process communication. If you're on instance 1, you only get the static variables associated with instance 1. So, but again, since I've implemented caching at many different parts, the refreshing and the accessing of that information is as efficient as possible. So also, for me, is really important as an architect of this to make the application developer's role as simple as possible. So I wanted to make it so that the developers they needed no domain knowledge of resource tokens. It basically just works. It works just like any other data context. So you don't have to know that resource tokens are being used. Maybe when you're debugging, if something happens, like the resources have been down for a while and the resource tokens haven't been refreshed, you need to be able to recognize that, oh, it's a resource token hasn't been refreshed problem. But that's really the only time that you need to be aware of that. So basically, each application, in order to use it, it has to register itself at which point it gets a config ID. It acts as a kind of application key or app ID. And then that is a secret that that application needs to protect. Because if other applications get it, then other applications can then write over their data. And if you are someone that owns a microservice, you don't want someone overriding your data. You want to be the owner of that data and feel confident that you have that protected via this resource token and permissions. If it turns out that it was leaked, then it's easy to refresh it within the system. It's just a matter of getting the SRE to click it, but I'll go into that a little bit later. And again, the Cosmos DB SQL client, it exposes the exact same method signatures as iDocument client. You're not giving up. It doesn't act any differently. But what it does is it restricts you, like it blocks many methods that you simply shouldn't have access to. So that's a way, that's part of the SRE approach to enforcing the principle of least privilege, which I'll go into a little bit later. But the principle of least privilege is basically you should only have access to what you have a real purpose for. So part of the Cosmos DB SQL client, part of its design is to only provide that functionality that you really should have, that the developer really should have. So throughout this, I've worked to maximize security, maximize performance, and minimize costs. Because we're moving into a world where everything needs to be secure at a very deep level. The idea of principle of least privilege is going to be something, if you don't know about it, it's going to be something that you will be learning about in the very near future. It's primary given the state of hackers these days. So balancing security, performance, and costs, principle of least privilege spelled out there. Again, I highlight that if we allow Cosmos DB collections to be created by developers, then Cosmos DB billing would simply get out of control. Even when you have like the minimum Cosmos DB collection, from what I've seen in our development environment, it's still like $300 a month. So that's not super expensive, but it's not nothing either. I mean, so that needs to be managed. And so key SRE enforcement points that I'm highlighting here, access keys will simply not be given out. Only applications given access. So you have to configure access for a particular application, and only that application gets that access. If another application wants access, then they would get a separate configuration. Only SREs will be given access to the configuration ID. The configuration ID is a static website that I wasn't able to block it. I was hoping able to block it in some way so that you can only access by certain people, but I wasn't able to leverage Azure Active Directory to do that. And the only way I could, the easiest way and what I feel is a very effective way to do it was to lock it down using a security key. So like and that security key has to be passed to each of the functions that are used to work with the configuration. I'll go into that later. And also it's important that the SREs are the point people in terms of making sure that when an application, when the developers say, I want a new collection, they're there to go, okay, we hear you, but have you tried to do it this way? Can you form your data into schema so that it can fit into this existing collection? And oftentimes it really can. So also this just goes into talking about some of the reasons why I chose the technologies that I did, so that, for example, to store the resource tokens, I'm actually using Cosmos DB because it's so damn fast. The resource token server really requires few resources, but you always want it hot. So you want to get a app service plan, but you can choose the lower end of the SKUs. And we found that it's still super fast because of all of the caching that's distributed throughout the system. Minimize costs. I think I've gone over a lot of this already. So this is the high-level view of this system. So to the left, I'm just going to, So to the left, this is the basically the resource token server. This is your application. So this application wants access to this guy. So it requests a resource token from here, and this then returns the resource token to here. That then allows this to call into here. The next time it goes to make a call, it already has this connection cached, so it's a direct shot. It only has to call out to this again if this is near the boundary of its expiry time. So this is like application wants to do some work. This goes, okay, well, I'll serve you a resource token. And this is all of the configuration that is there to support the creation and the refreshing of resource tokens. And I'll go into each of these parts later, soon. So this is a diagram that shows the caching. So the application here tends to call Cosmos DB. So this RTC cache, or resource token connection cache, is part of the Cosmos DB SQL client. So if it's a hit, then it just goes straight through. If it's a miss, then it goes to here. This is a resource token microservice. This goes, oh, has someone else requested this resource token recently, and is this resource token that I have still valid? If so, it just sends it back. If it misses that initial cache, then it goes into here and then goes to retrieve a resource token from that that system that I showed you, this system over here. So, but it only needs to do that if it's a if there's a miss here, then it comes here, and it may already have a connection to this resource token. Let me highlight that because I'm looking to enforce the principle of least privilege at every part of this system. The resource token microservice is itself configured as an application within the system. So it's not like this is some sort of God, this doesn't use access keys, because that would be a possible security hole. So instead, in order for it to access this, it has to retrieve its special resource token from Key Vault, which it has been given access to, so that if it doesn't already have the connection, then it retrieves the special resource token, creates a new connection, and then goes to here, and then it caches it, and then returns back to here, and that's able to make the call and go to that. So it may, I mean, me talking about it takes some time, and I use a lot of words, but when you experience it at runtime, it's very quick. So sub-second. If all of these miss, then it's sub-second to get through to it. And because the resource token is 4 hours long, it's not that often that you would actually have a miss. So, but of course that depends on how active your application is and stuff like that. But this goes into some detail about that. I think for where we are, I don't know how interesting it would be to go into that level of detail, but it's available in the slide. The configuration system, I haven't talked very much about this. So this is this configuration management microservice is the engine of it all. So the static website accesses it. This is implemented in Azure Functions as an HTTP trigger. This is a timer tick that every 5 minutes it sends out a request to this going, hey, are there any resource tokens that need to be refreshed? If so, do it. If there is something that needs to be refreshed, then it populates it. If it's the resource token server, then it populates this. Otherwise, it populates this, making the resource token then available for the resource token server over here. So similarly, the static website is used to then add configurations that are then used to generate the resource tokens. This just calls out that the static website does that work. This is that picture that I showed near the beginning, but this is highlighting that these are the resource tokens, and this is the configuration. So there's for each of the individual application configurations, there's a different partition. But for the resource tokens, they're all within the same partition. And this is what the individual documents look like. So on the left side, you see that there's these are the contents of a particular collection. And this collection, the unique system ID is the partition key. So you see that there are many documents, and then some of the documents share the same partition key, which means they're in the same place. So an SRE is able to see this because they have administrative access to the Azure portal, but application developers don't. So if a application would go to query this collection, they would only be able to see the documents in their partition. Just a part of the implementation of this. When you create a Cosmos DB document, you have a choice to either, first of all, when you create it, you should derive from resource. And then within resource, you have an ID property. So you can choose to either have Cosmos DB assign that ID property, or you could assign it yourself. And I'm saying that I recommend that you assign it yourself. That's because you tend to create documents within your application, and if you don't assign it yourself, you may not always have that ID. And when you work with Cosmos DB, it works most efficiently by querying and working with the resource ID. So if you have it available, then you're able to more efficiently use Cosmos DB and minimize your RUs. Even in like Microsoft documentation, they will say that query Cosmos DB in order to get the ID, and then query with that ID in order to do the work that you're trying to do. That is such a waste of RUs, and so you don't need to do that. So just set the ID and make sure that that ID is unique within the partition that you're in. About Poly. So I've been excited about Poly. Do you guys know what Poly is? So Poly is this a retry mechanism. So it's very cool. So you can use Poly within your applications to automatically retry failed requests. So for Cosmos DB, it's ideal because when you pay for Cosmos DB for a collection, you pay for only a certain level of RUs, or request units, so that if you request more than you've paid for, then you'll get a 429. So for me, it is like, okay, I want to use Poly then to automatically retry, because then you're not stepping outside of the thread to then retry that. You're retrying it within that same thread context, within the same flow. You're not giving it up. So and it would even work for because when Cosmos DB comes back with the 429, too many requests, it then tells you how long you should wait before you try again. And so I had this really cool thing set up. It was like, Poly's going to do all the work for me. And then I started talking with the Cosmos DB product team at Microsoft, going, okay, I think I've got everything done, but I want to make sure that I really have everything. And they came back and said, basically, don't worry about it, dude. We're already retrying for 429s. We're already retrying for 449s, which are transient errors. Not only that, but if you establish a connection, Cosmos DB goes down and then comes back up again, they reestablish that connection. So Microsoft has, in my mind, they've really outdone themselves. They've created this very resilient document client that takes so much of the hassle of working with Cosmos DB. So that's why, because a lot of people at work have talked about the different pain points, and it's like, dude, guys, I've addressed that. So definitely check this out. So given all of the information I've provided so far, now I'd like to talk about the configuration management website. So the configuration management microservice is made up of a set of Azure functions. And these Azure functions do very basic things, like very like CRUD-like things, like list all registered configuration Cosmos DBs, upsert Cosmos DB configuration permissions. That's basically that your application configuration, upsert it. Remove a registration. We don't want this application to have access anymore. Sync the configurations for Cosmos DB configs master. Basically, if you're a little concerned that maybe something is out of sync because it's kind of a complicated process to update and build the resource tokens, as I'll show later, you can just go, okay, I want to have some peace of mind. I'll just sync everything, and then make sure that all of the resource tokens exist for each of those. And then refresh resource tokens that have almost expired. That's what that timer tick calls into, like every 5 minutes. So it checks, is it within that, in my case, the 30-minute boundary? If so, let's try to refresh that. If it's unable to refresh it, then the application can still use its existing resource token until it eventually succeeds. Or until the resource token expires, in which case then it's locked out until the new resource token is generated. So, but once again, Azure is really good about that, and this is built on Azure Function, so it's even more robust, a serverless infrastructure. And finally, the last one has to do with the SREs. They wanted to be able to test the system, and they wanted to go, okay, your resource tokens aren't working for some reason. Can I access that Cosmos DB with an access key? So this verifiability to connect to Cosmos DB, it works for both resource token and access key. And this is what the simple Angular 7 node.js website looks like. I put it together in a couple of days. Editable grid. So you basically click on add blank row, and it adds a blank row. Save selected row, saves the row, does verification before you add it. But it basically just provides buttons for the functionality for the Azure functions that are provided by the microservice. So there is no web server here. It's just a static web page. So when you go to log into this, you're prompted for that application ID. So the key is to only give that application ID to a few SREs and then guard it, make sure that it's kept safe. And then before I finish, I wanted to show the flow diagrams for the different public methods. So what's involved to update a resource token, to add a configuration, stuff like that. Let me take a drink first. So these are the components that are involved. A Cosmos DB, actually, these are shown to be separate, but they're actually in the same collection as I've showed earlier. But conceptually, you may want to think of them as separate. And then there's a key vault, and then Azure management. So part of this system is created a service principal that is able to query all of the Azure resources, and then on the fly gain access to the access key for a particular Cosmos DB. It needs that access key in order to be able to generate a new resource token. So that's an integral part of creating the resource tokens, is being able to query the Azure infrastructure and then programmatically grab the access key. I thought that was pretty cool once I found out about that. It's like it feels so powerful to be able to basically have access to everything in Azure from C#.net. So here, git config, as you can imagine, it's just a simple lookup to the configuration database, but then refresh the config. So basically you have a configuration ID and then you want to change it because maybe it leaked. And so you want to create a new one. So there are quite a few steps here that are involved in, accessing this, a coordinated accessing of these different resources. So I wanted to show this just to let you know that the resource token server can be a bit more work than maybe is originally thought. So that's one of the reasons why I want to give these talks, is to show that here is a way to do it. And what I'm actually trying to do, and I'm working to get support from this at work, is to make this an open source project. So the idea, because there are many lines of code that are written to implement all of this. And also it's broken down into different microservices. And there's a lot of documentation that talks about how to lay out the system as well to make sure you have the proper security. So do you think there'd be interest in having this open sourced?
So interested in how would you package it? Because you were saying it's just they'd be calling Azure functions a lot of the time.
Actually, the open source would include the code for the Azure functions.
So you just like maybe template somehow that and have that deploy the functions with the code in it.
Exactly. Yep. And have the proper security configurations set up in advance. I haven't worked. I've worked with ARM, but not in terms of some like setting up the managed service identities or managed identities. So I'm not sure how quite to do that within ARM, but that would be something that would be tackled by the open source project.
Yeah. And then on the management server, management aspect, what was that running?
Oh, it's static website from that's exposed by the app service plan.
Okay.
So it's like, I mean, I could probably have it running on a static website within Azure storage, where it'd basically be almost free. Yeah. And so the security is just, again, that app key that secures it. So it's kind of like a password.
And I guess with functions that small, they're basically free as well, were they?
Pretty much, yeah. And because it's that configuration side, you don't need it to be super quick. It can run on the consumption. And like, how often are you adding new configuration? So it would be super cheap, super cheap. Yeah. The only thing that I think really costs money is keeping that resource token server hot. But it could be that you already have an app service plan for another Azure function that you need to be hot, and you can deploy you can deploy Azure functions from different solutions into the same app service plan. So as a way of also more efficiently using not having to pay more than you need to pay. And also with the design of this, if you're already using Cosmos DB, there may be a collection that you can then stuff this into as well, given the naming conventions and the partitioning scheme that this uses. So you could almost get this for free.
Yeah, just leverage one of the always on services, static point.
Yep.
And did you come across any issues at all once it was up and running?
No, so far it's been running smoothly for like 2 weeks, actually 3 weeks now. So it's like, I wrote it to be unit testable, and that's paying off, because just knowing that you're writing unit tests and writing the unit tests, it just helps clarify how you make the calls, and it ends up making the code that much cleaner, and it makes it easier to debug. And so yeah, so once I knocked out all of the little bugs that way, then it was no problems. Yeah. So that's it. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining.
Any other questions? All right, so let's take a break. So 10 minutes. Please come back by 8:40, and we have sushi remaining and pizza and the free drinks outside. Yeah, and after 10 minutes, we shall resume.
Cool.
Thank you.
I got to take off, but thanks for allowing me to talk. I appreciate that.
You need to give it.
Yeah, I need to take off.
Yeah, very much well.
My pleasure. Yeah. So, I mean, I've seen the concept of resource tokens, pushed around a lot over the past 10, 15 years, but you never see implementation. And it just seems to me, as I'm finishing this up, it's like, holy cow, I bet a lot of other people are trying to tackle this same problem. And I feel like I've got a solution, really inexpensive and clean, and I think a lot of people would just benefit.
Yeah.
So hope my company sees it the same way, even though I'm out the door and heading back to SF. I think a lot of people there recognize that it could be a good open source project and a way for them to give back, stuff like that.
Wasn't as expensive.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people saying, you're looking at alternate costs. It's going to be the money hungry one.
I know, but it's not necessary.
Yeah, that's what it is. So far, the people that are consuming it hasn't been ridiculous. But like you said, you made sure that the right people have the right access. Otherwise, it's not fill up.
Exactly, and that could be where a lot of that fear comes from. So there's a lot of buzz on that. Fear and uncertainty dread about, managers and customers TV. And so I'm working to try to say that. Just because I want to use it. and I want to use it because it's easy to buy. It can be cheap. I mean, compared to the server, the server is very expensive as well. And it provides as fast access time, maybe a little bit faster. And I mean, if you compare the cost, I can't believe one is more expensive than the other.
Yeah. I understand it's interesting. Probably there's a lot of solutions where people are leveraging SQL and the cosmos fear the costs.
Yeah, and then think about Kingshift and table storage. But it's table storage doesn't allow you to query off of the road tree or I think there's partition to this, but you basically have two things query on. And so if you need to query on a sub property of your document, it's super subs, and you just can't do it. Yeah, and so how we do is that thing right in the middle between SQL Server and then blob storage, data storage. So, anyway, I think there's deep spots there, but people have to get over being afraid.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I got to take it out. So, very nice meeting you.
Yeah, great to meet you too.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Hey, kid, it's been nice meeting you. I'm out of here.
You should be back to Japan anyway, right? Somehow.
Maybe somehow, if I do, I'll stop by.
Of course.
All right.
So, which area are you going back? United States?
Yeah, San Francisco.
San Francisco, okay.
Yeah. I'm leaving my current
Vacation.
no, moving back to San Francisco. I was only supposed to be here in Tokyo for like a year,
Oh,
and so I'm just like moving back.
So he says goodbye to Japan.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed Tokyo. Tokyo is very cool. And
Sometimes you come back to Japan, like for vacation.
Vacation, yeah.
probably, actually, I tried to do this. Let me grab one of these guys. I tried to do this motorcycle tour of Japan.
Oh, around Wall Street.
Yeah, I had it all planned out, but then the Japanese, the bike rental shop wouldn't rent me.
Why? The German license.
I don't have a Japanese license, but I did have an international driver's permit,
Yeah.
but I also have a residence permit. And they said because I have a residence permit, that if I tried to rent, that the local police may void my insurance. So they could hold me over and throw me in jail. And they pointed me to post on the US Embassy website where that exact thing had happened. So what I want to do is, okay, I'll leave Japan, go back to the States, and maybe next year around Golden Week, try to do that same thing. And this time with the international letters for that, I won't have a residence, and maybe I can hold on. Because I think I really want to go to Hokkaido, and I want to go down south, and I'm basically just going to ride around of Japan, go down to the south, and then ride up, all that. And I just would have been incredible. So that would be the reason why I come back to Japan.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I think it takes at least a month.
There we go. That's what is what's your
Tracer.
exactly? That's what I was going to rent. We go around Japan. It would have been a perfect. I mean, I don't like a dirt bike. I can have some speed, and pickup. But that would have that like pickup as well as you can handle the back.
Which one do we use? Rental like 1.9?
No, it was Japanese biking. I live around Akasaka, and so it's like right where Akasaka runs to Minami. So they're nice boats. They're from Australia, but they're just like, no, dude, we can't let you do this because it's a huge risk.
Hopefully they go well and other rental ones go back. They'll probably have the same situation.
Yeah, but next year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's actually cool. I'll reach out like that. Let's connect there.
Brian, one quick ask. Would you be in the picture?
Yeah, sure.
Oh, sure.
Together.
ちょっと皆さん前に。Everybody could have in front because Brian have to leave now. I don't want to miss opportunity to take picture.
Okay, so 1, 2, 3. Again. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.
How about your friend?
All right, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate it.
Right, and meanwhile, because this is a gorgeous goodbye, the session continues. Our agenda says we have the open question and answer section, and the direction of the we don't have enough people today. I want to be clear. Do you guys have any questions or requests for feedback?
Okay.
Anybody? So how many of you are
I would be
IS people?
very happy to. Yeah.
Ars?
Yeah, we definitely.
SARS?
We can find a way.
Anybody?
Translate it.
Discipline?
So,
Nothing? All right, so we should go right now the topic of that. Yeah. Because we want to focus on the more like the developer kind of stuff.
Cool.
All right. All right, and any other feedback? If not, because we still have time and I had kind of 5 minutes to prepare, I would like to introduce one service, not brand new, but it's combined with the IaaS and the PaaS. And I don't think it's PaaS, but it's combined everything. And let me do that in like 10 minutes. All right. So I would like to talk about IoT. And I want to make sure my slide is on the YouTube. Yeah. Yeah. Let me check. There you go. Yep. All right. So whenever you do IoT, because IoT is very hard. Whenever you need to do IoT, you have to have hardware on the sensor side. You need to buy some camera, Raspberry Pi, anything which can sense in the data, right? The temperature, humidity, pressure. Then from there, you want to send the data securely to the IoT hub, the gateway. IoT hub is a kind of the SaaS application, or rather SaaS or PaaS maybe. So it's just receiving the data. Once received, you have to pass into like stream processing to see the average of the last 1 minute or average of the last 10 minutes, or maybe maximum value or the minimum value of the last 10 minutes to see if there is something bad happening or not. If something happening, we can use in the Azure function or logic app to kick the trigger. Like for example, if this is too high, maybe we want to turn on the air conditioner. If the temperature is too low, maybe we want to turn off the air conditioner, right? And as a result, you want to see the data for the future analysis. So you want to see the stored data by using the Power BI, right? But if you just start in the IoT project, how many resources do you need to do? Right? If you need a device, you need the IoT hub, you need the Power BI, you need the storage, you need the function, you need the logic app, blah, 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 blah. And still, you may need to writing some code so that your IoT device starts sending the data. You also need to writing some of the Power BI visual so that you can see the data. So much work. And of course, as you can guess, we have a solution for that. Yay! And it's called IoT Central. So what is IoT Central? That is just another Azure service. So if I coming back to my Azure portal, so if you click the add resource or create resource, and if you go to IoT and Central, IoT Central, yep, there you go. And you just click this one to start doing the IoT Central. But because I already have IoT Central in my resource group, so once you created this very simple blade is a result, because IoT Central is an application which you can go by clicking this IoT Central application. So once you created actually, this is kind of, I think it takes like 5 seconds to provision. So go to portal.azure.com and just try to do that. Within 5 seconds, you see this dashboard. Beautiful. And what this dashboard does is this has everything. When I say everything, including the device sensor as a simulated device,
and it has an IoT hub, it has the Power BI, it has the function, everything. So if, for example, if I come into this device set, device explorer, so I'm having 3 devices registered. 2 of them is a simulated one. So if I click one of the simulated pod, so this is the information which this is, by the way, this is real time. This is keep running. I may need to stop it, but for the first 5 devices, it's free. So you can run it forever.
Is it in preview for that?
This is not preview. This is GA already. Yeah. So what this does is it keeps sending the temperature, and I can set the threshold, or I can set the state, or I can set the event. The sensor data is just a data. If the temperature says 20 Fahrenheit, it's 20 Fahrenheit. And if it says 100 Fahrenheit, it's 100 Fahrenheit. No other meaning. 100 is 100, 20 is 20, right? Then you are the one to decide if that's too much or not. You need to put the threshold to decide if 100 is more than 80, because your 80 might be your threshold, right? Other things you want to track from the IoT device is a state. For example, if this is a fan, the turning fan, if the fan is on or fan is off, that's the state of the device. If the light is on or light is off, that's the state of the device, right? So you want to track the state, and when the fan is off, what do you want to do? Maybe you want to back it on if the fan should be always on, or you may turn it on only if the Fahrenheit is too high, right? And another thing is event. When the fan water generates the error, you want to do something. You may want to do, or you may not want to do, depends, right? So if there is an error message within like 10 messages within 1 minute, you may want to do something. But if there is only 2 errors in last hour, maybe you want to ignore, right? It's up to you. But this simulated device can give us a bunch of information, and it's very easy to define everything. So if you go into the device template, then if I click new, I can start creating the device. So the custom one is something we can create the simulated one. And if you already have some device like the Mix chip or Raspberry Pi or Windows IoT Core, you go ahead to using this template. But because I don't have any template at this moment, I just go ahead to click custom. I just type some device name, create. Now this is a template, and I have nothing at this moment. So I need to keep adding. So I just adding the measurement. And which measure you want to add? One is the telemetry, like the temperature or the humidity. Another is a state of something. State might be on or off, or state 1, 2, 3. It really depends on the device. And you can define event. But for example, if I set telemetry, what's the display name? So maybe humid. And field name could be same as display name, humid. And telemetry unit. So humid is what's the humidity, the unit? Percentage? Okay, let's do that. And the minimum value, 0. Maximum, is that 100? I don't know, I have no idea. Anyways, yeah, and the decimal place is maybe 0.2, sounds good, right? And I can say the color, because it's the humidity, I want to make it the degree, right? Then I can save it. Now all of a sudden, the custom device, simulated device, has a sensor which sending the humidity, right? It's very easy, right? And there is no data at this moment. Why? Because I just defined. But if you wait enough, the second, maybe 10 seconds, 20 seconds, the data should be coming. When data is coming, meaning this device is sending the data. This actually sending. Background, you don't see, but the background, there is sending. So the IoT hub, and the IoT hub grab the data. And this is a Power BI screen, by the way. Power BI already have built in the chart, and you can see the data comes in, right? And meanwhile, if you want to make the state, then status like fun state, and display name is fun, and I can say value. So one value is supposed to be on, right? and the display name on, and because on I want to be green, and adding another one, off, and I want to make this color red because off is not good at this moment. All right, so see, we already have one dot, meaning the simulated device already starts sending the data. And this guy started the display by using the Power BI component. So this is how easy it is by using the IoT Central to start using your data. Now you have device, you have IoT, the hub sort. So if you want to go to device set, you can define the query. So like, because each device, you can have the properties. For example, if I coming back to my pre-created the device, I can have the settings, or I can have the properties, like the location of the device, or the name of the device, or the owner of the device, right? And if I mark this like the location, if there is a 10 device in Seattle or 10 device in Tokyo, you want to have the device set, like Tokyo devices or Seattle devices, right? Now you can define the device set. And if you come in device set, there is a kind of query parameter, like is this the group by place or is this group by some property, right? Then if you go to Device Explorer, you can see all of the device. But if you want to have more simulated device, you can just click plus to add. If you have real device, go ahead to add real one. And if I have simulated one, I have simulated one. So I click simulated, and there we go. Yeah, that's simulated one. The temperature and the fan mode and the error state. And if I coming back to device mode, see, I just added which one is the anyway. So one of them is I just added. So that's the how easy it is. Then if I coming back to my device, the template, and coming back to my define one and the command. So this is a command which we can send to the device. So if I want to send the turn off the fan, device is the one who has to receive the command to take action, right? So we can simulate that the receiving command part as well. And we can also create in the rules. So for example, what we can do is, so let's say I want to check the temperature. So it's a temp to high. And if I go to condition, and you can specify any condition as long as the device has the property. So at this moment, I have the temperature sensor. And if temperature aggregation, so I don't want to aggregate anything because it's the pure temperature, right? Or maybe if you want to do the aggregate or the average, you can do that. For example, the average of is greater than the threshold, maybe 80, then time duration, because you want to aggregate the average, right? So last maybe 5 minutes. So last 5 minutes average is more than 80. Then what you want to do? I want to take the action. So right, let me just save in this one first. Then for the action, we have a bunch of action to take. Maybe we can send email. Maybe we can trigger the function. If you don't want to write any code, go ahead to use the logic app, which is a flow. And if you are using the personal logic app, which is Microsoft Flow, or you can just send using the webhook to hook the trigger so that you can do whatever you want. So this is the trigger. So now we're supporting logic app, meaning you can hook up this sensor to anywhere. If you have Jira, yeah, go ahead to load the case support case for Jira. If you have Dynamics, load to there. If you have Salesforce, just create the support ticket there, right? Then, what if you want to store as a keep the data? You can keep the data by going to the administration, data export. Here. So we support block storage, event hub, and the service bus. That the generated data is temporarily storing. I don't know how much data we can store, but we are supporting the flashing the data out to the persistent storage, so that when you connect in the real device, you don't want to lose the data, right? You want to keep it. So you can flash the data to blob storage or service bus or event hub. This is interesting because blob is a persistent storage, right? And event hub, why you want to store that to the event hub? Because if you want to write in very complex query by using stream analytics, anyway, you have to send to the stream analytics, right? To do that, you can sending all the telemetry data to event hub so that you can continue doing the IoT kind of cloud side of stuff if you want. Then finally, because we have all the data, we have all the information, we want to put all the data back to the dashboard, so that it's also supporting the dashboard creation. So if I go to click edit, I can change the place, I can change the tile, I can put the new link. And if you're going back to the template again, template also have the dashboard information. So for example, if you go to dashboard, and if I see there, so this is the maximum temperature, the dashboard, the item, it said the past 1 week telemetry, and that's the last 1 week telemetry, the max value here. So we can create in the tile, and this tile could be pinned to the dashboard so that you can see that. So this is kind of one-stop solution to start doing the IoT central. And for the first 5 devices, it's for free. That's the best part, right? Anyway, so that's the pretty new Azure services. And unfortunately, this is not available in the Japan region yet. But I believe this is available in West or East US and Europe and somewhere near Asia. Southeast Asia, maybe. Yeah. But as you know, the Azure keep adding the new services to every region. So if you keep checking, who knows, maybe we already have, right? I don't know. But this was created like last week in my dashboard. So when I tried, I didn't see Japan region. But if I try now or maybe tomorrow, yeah, guess what? Maybe we may have. And back to my original story, the Azure update. If you check the Azure update page, and if you filter with IoT related information, you can see all the latest information about IoT services, which may include IoT, the central is available in Japan region, yay, kind of stuff. All right, that's it. Any question?
You had one set up. Have you got any other IoT thing? Because you had the 2 simulations, but you had one.
Yeah, so the other one is the real one.
Yeah.
And that is sitting in my house.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm using my Raspberry Pi.
Yeah.
Setup, but the setup and connected, and I just stop it. So the data is there, but device is not there anymore. So it doesn't get any information at this moment. But the interesting part for the simulated one is you can set the value from remote, and event is happening like randomly. So even though it's simulated, we cannot ask in the simulator to generate event now.
Yes, you got to wait.
Yeah, it's kind of, so if you want to do the demo, I recommend to take care of the continuous event happening, because we cannot ask the simulated device to stop happening the event. They keep making the event happen. And if you do the demo to the customer, your device looks going crazy because every kind of 3 or 5 seconds, there's some event happening. Error. Right? But because it's simulated. Right? Because you don't want to wait another day until the next event is happening, right? That's a simulation. And if you want to set some data, actually there is a setting, like for example, if I can say, hey, the temperature of the device set 80 degrees Celsius. And they can change the value, but we can set how much fluctuation they can have, like up to 70, up to 90, down to 70. And if we want to do some simulation, we can just set back to 40, so that some events should be happening. But immediately after, I can reset back to 80, so that the graph looks like going near 80, all of a sudden going down to 40, because I asked the device to connect 40, and coming back to 80. And then just showing the customer, now we have the temperature 40. What happens? Look at this, the trigger, the flow has been triggered based on this action. And if you want to create some simulated device by using Node.js or the C# or Java, there is a sample application out there.
and there is not much code, just copy and paste and start running. Then all of a sudden you have the device. Yeah, that's it. Anyway, that's it for the IoT Central. I hope you have some idea what IoT Central means, because some people do not know what is IoT Central. Many people know in the IoT Hub, but not so many people know about IoT Central. Why? Because that's quite new services. Yeah. Documentation is quite good. Yeah, check out the doc. Yeah, there is a quite understandable step-by-step 1 to 5. Yeah. All right, that's it for today. And the next time, actually, I have a request from the foreign the MVP that some of the people come visiting Japan end of July, I guess, right?
Yeah, it was
Yeah, and he would like to present something on site. So we try to arrange the time by end of July. Do you remember the day? July 30th?
I think it's July 30th.
Yeah, so we try to set up the July 30th of the next meetup.
So
Yeah.
the person, he runs the meetup in Helsinki.
Helsinki, yeah. The guy from Helsinki would like to be a speaker in Tokyo so that he can have in the Tokyo as a speaker title in his profile, which is cool, right?
So he said he's done, I think everywhere he's been, he's tried to do talks and meetups in different countries.
I think that's a good thing. And another news on the same day, actually, do you remember the Meter, who is a GCP guy? The Meter is coming back to Japan again. So he would like to speak something again. So I can set up Azure Meetup for him or .NET Developer Meetup. Yeah, I will ask him which one he wants.
Okay.
Yeah, in that case, we may have the first time ever 2 speakers from the foreign country. Very doable. All right, that's it. All right, thank you for coming, and please make sure you eat up all the food. Do not waste. What I know, okay, will be coming. And yeah, please help to clean up the garbage. Thank you for coming.